Hello fellow data friends. Maybe you want to establish your first company and you want this juicy plus 5% birth rate modifier. Or you just want to feed your people with some nice food. Well, tough luck, because groceries, and by extension food companies, suck below a standard of living of 20. And it will probably still be bad below a standard of living of 25. Groceries are actually for the rich, not for the poor huddled masses. This is Russia at game start. We have 12 food industries. Every food factory without liquor production is losing money. This is a food industry in Smolensk. It takes 123 grain worth 3,100 pounds and turns it into 139 groceries worth 2,500 pounds. So this factory takes a product and makes it worse. But wait, both grain and groceries satisfy basic food. And 1 unit of groceries is actually worth 1.5 units of grain in terms of need satisfaction. So why is turning grain into a superior product so bad? For one, this tooltip is actually misleading. Let's compare these values to the actual base prices of these goods. So yes, meat, fruit and groceries provide 50% more satisfaction for the basic food need, but they also cost 50% more than grain or fish. So the satisfaction per pound is actually the same. Since groceries and grain can substitute each other, I thought at first I just need to produce more groceries, so then people will transition from grain to groceries, but that wasn't working. So let's dive deeper. Demand for groceries can come from two different POP needs: basic food need and luxury food need. Both work differently. Basic food need is active for POPs with a standard of living between 1 and 29. In the brackets you can see the base price, the maximal allowed market share modifier for consumption calculation, and the weight. This is the preference weight, how much this good will be used to satisfy this need. We go into more detail about this later, but in essence, people just want to buy less meat, fruit and groceries to satisfy their basic food need. Because nothing beats eating unrefined grain if you are poor. And poor in this context means until standard of living 29. The second source for grocery demand comes from the luxury food need, which starts slowly at standard of living 20. But at level 20, a POP will spend 8 pounds on luxury food and still 163 pounds on basic food. Wealth level 28 is the first wealth level where people spend more money on luxury food than on basic food. But how exactly does this work for needs which can be satisfied by multiple goods? This is the formula for buy packages and substitution from the Victoria 3 wiki. The first term is to get the number of units a POP would buy if they can use only that one good to fulfill their needs. Here's the code for the buy package for a wealth 10 POP. The code is written in pounds, not in item units. 10,000 people at level 10 spent 137 pounds on basic food, which corresponds to 6.85 units of grain. Hence this first term is used to scale demand according to standard of living and to the base price of the good. Working adults consume more than dependents, and a POP can be a lot bigger than 10,000. That is why the last part of the formula is here. So let's concentrate on the juicy part in the middle. The purchase weight of a good is the weight times market share after accounting for min or maximal supply share, which is good specific. You can see those limits in the wiki. For example, if a POP wants to satisfy its luxury food need, the calculation for consumption has to use at least 10% fruit and at most 75% fruit market share. The market share of a good is calculated as sell orders of a good minus half non-POP buy orders relative to all goods for that need. So if there is a high supply of a good, it will be used a lot. If some factories use the good a lot, then your population will use it less. While the actual price is not explicitly mentioned here, this will still produce some demand equals supply behavior. But why do people avoid cheap groceries and meat then? Well, let's have a closer look at this mysterious weight. It actually consists of two separate parts. For one, it's a satisfaction weight as shown in the tooltip. For groceries, that's 1.5. But there's also the preference weight for the need category, which you can see in the wiki. So for the basic food need, it's these values. Pops will buy less meat, fruit and groceries for basic food, just because that is considered posh food even if it would be cheap. So for groceries, this weight is actually 1.125, and for fruit and meat it's 0.75. But remember, these goods are also more expensive at base price. The 12.5% bonus for market weight for groceries is not enough to compensate for the 50% higher base price. And fruit and meat are even worse. That's why ranches are often not very profitable. I will do some calculations in a minute, but I want to emphasize that all of this is for basic food need. Luxury food need will drive groceries demand, but as seen earlier, this demand starts at level 20 and is still weaker than the basic food need below standard of living 28. But let's focus on the basic food need, because for the earlier middle game, your average standard of living will be likely below 20. It may even stay below 28 in the late game. I built an Excel spreadsheet to calculate the food demand so we can investigate further. At first, I tried to rebuild the food demand for this pop and fair, and my values look pretty decent. The differences could be attributed to rounding errors. When I tried the same for this pop in Smolensk, my numbers for grain and groceries were a bit off. But Smolensk has a food factory, so there's likely a local market influence which is not mentioned in the wiki. But now we can investigate the demand behavior for the basic food need. Let's say we have a market with 1000 grain and no other food. I matched my workforce modifier such that they will use 1000 grain. Now let's assume we build one food factory with the base production method. Then we get 45 groceries and 40 non-pop demand for grain. Then our pop wants to buy 32 groceries and 950 grain. But we are producing 45 groceries, which means they will only sell at 72% base price, which means about 21 pounds. Hence this grocery factory will earn 190 pounds. But this is before paying wages. Even in states with very cheap labor in Russia, wages still use about 300 pounds for a full building. So the basic food need cannot sustain a food factory. But what about higher production methods? Sweeteners produce 65 groceries and need 15 sugar, which has a base price of 30. This profit calculation is purely based on grain and grocery prices. Sugar is not included yet. So 15 sugar with a base price of 30 means about 450 pounds input cost. So again, less than 200 pounds profit, which needs to cover the wages. Sugar might be cheap in your market in general, but you usually don't produce sugar locally everywhere. So it's not so cheap after accounting for MAPI. What about canned meat? So we get 75 groceries and only use 20 grain. So we get a profit of about 1200 before paying for iron and meat. 10 iron costs 400 at base price. 20 meat costs 600 at base price. Usually iron is more expensive since it is an important industrial good, and meat is often less pricey. Let's be generous and say we pay 500 pounds for iron and only 400 pounds for meat. And then we have 300 pounds left to pay wages, which is just enough for states with extremely low labor wages. While it is usually easy to source meat locally, iron supply is limited to iron provinces. So this might be even worse when accounting for MAPI. So in conclusion, groceries suck unless you have a strong demand for luxury food, which needs at least standard of living of 20 on a pop level. So I would avoid getting a food company unless you are in the late game or manage to skyrocket your average standard of living to at least 20. Probably more like 25. Then it should work fine. If you want to know how to get big companies in general, click on the top video. Thanks a lot for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed it. And I will see you in the next video.